If you're someone who enjoys courtroom drama, real-life disputes, and the sharp sound of justice being served, then this is the place for you. On this channel, we take you inside some of television's most intense legal showdowns. From shocking testimonies to verdicts that leave you speechless, we break down the best moments, examine the facts, and offer our own insights along the way. Expect real people, real consequences. And one big question in every case: who's telling the truth? And what better way to start than with a legend herself, Judge Judy Sheindlin, in her new Amazon freebie series, Judy Justice. The sharpest voice in court is back, and today we're diving into one of the most explosive cases yet. Let's get started. We are reviewing case 393, Bruce versus Bellefontaine. Now, on the surface, it starts as something small, a verbal exchange at a local car wash. But what unfolds is a story of conflicting claims, lost jobs, a police report, and a courtroom showdown that will leave you questioning everything. This episode isn't just about what happened in that moment. It's about how one incident, just minutes long, led to life-changing consequences for both women involved. So buckle up, because we're about to break it all down. The plaintiff in this case is Bruce, an Uber driver and a self-described healer. On July 31st, 2020, Bruce was at a car wash. According to her, she was just waiting in line when the defendant, Bellefontaine, became aggressive. Bruce says Bellefontaine leaned her head into Bruce's open window and began yelling, feeling threatened. Bruce says she grabbed a bottle, a Springle bottle, which she insists was empty, and struck Bellefontaine in self-defense. But Bellefontaine paints a very different picture. She claims Bruce was the one cutting in line, acting erratically, and that when she confronted her with words, Bruce responded with violence, hitting her with what Bellefontaine describes as a metal bottle. Here's where things take a legal turn. Bellefontaine, not Bruce, went to the police. She filed an assault report. That report led to Bruce losing her job as an Uber driver and facing a $10,000 fine. Bruce is now suing Bellefontaine, arguing that the report was false, malicious, and destroyed her livelihood.
Defendant statements and independent witness statements, the people conclude that the defendant committed a battery upon the victim. That's the way the court starts. When the defendant struck the victim with a metal water bottle, the defendant had other, less violent means to stop any threat that she felt. That's the conclusion of the court. However, the people also conclude that the defendant could have felt threatened by the victim's aggressive approach to the defendant's car. Therefore, the defendant would likely receive, if the case went to trial, a self-defense instruction. Therefore, she has a colorable self-defense, and the people are unlikely to secure a guilty verdict. That's a verdict beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not my standard here.
As the hearing begins, Judge Judy immediately starts peeling back the layers. She's reviewing the documents submitted by Bruce, and at first, Bruce presents herself as calm, rational, and wronged. But if you know Judge Judy, you know calm doesn't mean convincing. She quickly notices some inconsistencies. Questions start flying. Why didn't Bruce file her own report? Why was her documentation vague? And most importantly, why should the court believe her version of events without strong proof? At this point, Judy isn't buying the clean victim narrative, and that sets the tone for the rest of the episode. Let's focus on what actually happened at the car wash. Bruce claims she was sitting in her vehicle, minding her business, when Bellefontaine became verbally aggressive and even physically intrusive by leaning into her car. Bruce says she felt boxed in, threatened, and acted to defend herself. Bellefontaine, meanwhile, insists Bruce tried to cut in line and that she only raised her voice to call her out. According to her, Bruce responded to a verbal disagreement with physical assault. At this point, it becomes a matter of credibility, who's telling the truth, and then the game changes. A man named John steps in, a neutral witness. He gives a short but powerful account, one that supports Bellefontaine's version. He states that Bruce did, in fact, hit Bellefontaine after being yelled at. That confirmation from someone with no personal stake in the case, is a turning point. Until then, Bruce's argument rested on the idea that she was the only one under attack. But when an objective third party backs the defendant's version of events, the entire balance of the case shifts. Then comes another layer, Bellefontaine's health. She reveals that shortly after the incident, she suffered a heart attack. She attributes it to the emotional toll of the altercation, the shock of being assaulted, and the stress of legal proceedings. This isn't just drama, it's serious. You could visibly see Judge Judy's demeanor change. Whatever tolerance she had left for Bruce's explanation started to fade. The idea that Bruce, despite all this, was presenting herself as the sole victim, it didn't sit well. And the judge made that clear. Bruce holds firm. She says she has a clean record, that she only acted because she was scared, that she sought legal advice and did what she thought was right. But Judge Judy isn't focused on what Bruce thought. She's focused on what Bruce did. And when the facts, the timeline, and the witness testimony don't support Bruce's claims, well, you know what's coming. In the final stretch of the hearing, Judge Judy lays it out with her signature clarity and no-nonsense delivery. She calls out the inconsistencies. She acknowledges the emotional and physical toll on Bellefontaine, and she issues a judgment that reflects the facts, not the feelings. Bruce's narrative crumbles under the weight of witness confirmation and logic, and the message is clear. Justice doesn't favor who speaks louder, but who tells the truth. Let's pause here for a moment and really think about what just happened in that courtroom, because while the verdict was decisive, and yes, the evidence leaned strongly in one direction, the underlying themes in this case are more complicated than they appear. This case isn't just about who hit who, it's about how people perceive themselves in conflict. It's about personal truth versus legal truth. Bruce believed she was wronged. That much was obvious from the way she spoke, the passion in her voice, and the way she carried herself throughout the hearing. And there's something to be said for that, because to her, this wasn't just about a car wash. This was about dignity, about feeling misunderstood, and about trying to reclaim a version of her story that was lost when that police report was filed. But here's the thing, emotions don't always equal justification. You can feel victimized and still be wrong in your actions. Judge Judy doesn't judge feelings, she judges behavior. What matters in her courtroom is what happened, who did what, and how that lines up with the law. That's what makes her such a powerful voice in courtroom television. She sees through narratives and focuses on accountability. Let's take a deeper look at both women. Bruce came in with composure, intelligence, and a soft-spoken confidence. She clearly prepared for this hearing and had a strategy. You could tell she believed she was mistreated, and she held onto that belief tightly. But that confidence began to look like calculation when inconsistencies popped up. Judy saw it, the viewers saw it, and suddenly Bruce's calm tone started to feel more rehearsed than real. Bellefontaine, on the other hand, was emotionally raw. She didn't polish her words. She didn't try to win favor with the judge. She told her story, and she backed it up with a police report, a witness, and real-life consequences, including her health. She wasn't perfect, but she was honest, and that, in the end, was more powerful than Bruce's presentation. Now let's talk about John, the witness. In courtroom TV, witnesses don't always play a huge role. Sometimes they're forgettable, but not here. John's brief statement shifted the momentum of the entire case. It's one thing when two people tell different stories. It's another when a third, neutral party, someone with no dog in the fight, confirms what one of them said. His credibility was never questioned. His body language was confident, and his version of events aligned perfectly with Bellefontaine's. That one moment, just 27 seconds of testimony, exposed a gap in Bruce's version of events that she couldn't recover from. A lot of people might look at this case and focus on the $10,000 fine, and yes, that's a lot of money. But what really matters here is the damage to reputation, livelihood, and emotional well-being. Bruce lost her job. That's not a small thing. Whether she was right or wrong, the consequences were real. She no longer had access to her primary income, and she carried the weight of a legal accusation that followed her. Bellefontaine, on the other hand, didn't walk away unharmed. She experienced emotional distress, humiliation, and Most notably, a heart attack. That's serious, that's life-altering. And whether it was entirely triggered by this incident or not, the connection between emotional trauma and physical health cannot be ignored. These are real-world stakes. This wasn't about small claims or broken property. This was about people's lives and how easily they can be disrupted by a moment of misjudgment. One thing I always look for in episodes like this is non-verbal communication. The facial expressions, the tone of voice, the posture, the eye contact. Bruce, for example, maintained eye contact, but sometimes she looked rehearsed, too calm, too polished, almost like someone who had run through their version of the story a few too many times. Bellefontaine, by contrast, was less composed, but more authentic. Her frustration felt real. Her emotions weren't neatly packaged, and that actually worked in her favor. Judge Judy picked up on those cues too. She always does. In fact, if you watch her closely, she often pauses before responding, not just to hear what's said, but to feel whether it rings true. That's what makes her so good at what she does. She reads people, not just papers. There's something else that stood out in this case, and it's something we all need to understand better. Intent is not the same as impact. Bruce may not have intended to cause serious harm. She may have just wanted Bellefontaine to back off. But the impact of her actions was real. A blow to the head, a police report, emotional trauma, and eventually a heart attack. In court, intent might reduce your sentence, but it doesn't erase responsibility. Judge Judy zeroed in on that. She didn't question whether Bruce felt threatened. She questioned whether her response was reasonable. And that's the heart of justice. Not whether you're emotional, but whether your actions were justified in the eyes of the law. What can we take away from this case? Sometimes the consequences of a single moment stretch far beyond what we expect. Whether it's a bottle thrown in panic or a police report filed in anger, these things have weight. They carry impact. And in this courtroom, Judge Judy makes sure they're taken seriously. This case was messy, emotional, and very, very real. 2 women, 1 moment, and a legal fallout that changed their lives. That's why Judy Justice keeps us coming back, because the truth is never as simple as it seems. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you agree with Judge Judy's verdict? Was Bruce truly the victim here, or did Bellefontaine deserve justice? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We're excited to read your take. If you like this breakdown and want more real courtroom drama with expert analysis and a fresh perspective, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell. This is just the beginning. We've got more cases, more insights, and more jaw-dropping moments ahead. Thanks for joining us for our very first review. Until next time, stay sharp, stay fair, and remember, never underestimate the power of the truth.